you describe the teaching philosophy behind the course?
That's a really interesting one. So again, this is probably driven by my own personal values and things. I like to let them creep into everything I do. And so, for example, I try and always think about inclusivity in the most broadest sense. So, for example, in the content that we teach, so thinking about whose work and whose voices are we amplifying, I think that's incredibly important. And I think there's a lot to be said for doing that in this more kind of skills-based way. And also thinking about it in terms of evidence. So a lot of people, when they think about evidence-based practice and think about evidence-based action, they think about academic sources of evidence. And let's be honest, if we critically read any given paper, there's probably quite a number of flaws. And so it's really important that we think about all the different sources of evidence. So, for example, practitioners have loads of experience. It's not written down often, but that doesn't make it any less legitimate. And so with working out and changing their way of thinking to be more inclusive about how do we integrate all these different forms of evidence. And in particular, when we think about inclusivity, I also do what's known as the class charter, which is a kind of co-agreed statement between everybody involved. So student to student, me to student, student to me, about what we expect from each other. And I think that's also really important in embedding those values. So, for example, if something happens and it doesn't quite go as planned, I can say, look, this is how we should be acting. So if there's any concerns, we can refer people to that as the kind of co-agreed statement of how we expect to act. So there's that dimension of inclusivity, which I think is really important. I get a lot of students from a lot of different backgrounds with a lot of different experiences, and I think it's really important that we build these into the educational experience. The idea is not to get everybody into the same conforming mindset. In fact, it's the opposite, right? It's to get people to be more open about different ideas and different notions and being inquisitive. And I think basically when we're children, we're encouraged to do that. And then at some point in our lives, the switch flips, and all of a sudden, it's about memory, it's about remembering things. And there's so little of that. Well, we should be curious and asking why and exploring and going down those rabbit holes and asking those sorts of questions. And I think that's a really important thing to foster, particularly when that isn't necessarily culturally what is expected. When I think about my own student profile, it's quite diverse. Some countries don't encourage students to have that sort of mindset. It's listen to the teacher, for example, and memorize what they say, and that's definitely not what is trying to be achieved here. I think it's very important that we build up confidence for people to be independent, kind of critical thinkers. And then the third kind of core component, I think, of my philosophy is the skills-based. So it's all very well and good people having understanding of things. So do you understand what a paper mill is, for example? Do you understand what it means to what it means to interpret a particular effect size, for example? That's all very well and good. But what's really important is we know what to do with that information when we have it. Being able to adapt that and to apply that to circumstances and let that inform judgments and decision making, I think that's really important. So the practical skills component of the teaching, I think, is the most important as a way of kind of bringing all of that together.